Many of us learn about the terrible events of the Holocaust, but facts alone are not enough. It's so important to hear survivors' stories because they too speak for the millions of people who weren't permitted to tell theirs. Ivor Perl is 82 and a survivor. In October 2014, I had the honour of meeting him and hearing about his life. He was born into a large family in Mokko, Hungary. Anti-Semitism affected Jewish people there for generations.
It was like an ongoing thing, and it was part of life. I mean, I had to go to school. I had to practically walk the gauntlet, running the gauntlet. I mean, the last thing you did is go back home and tell your parents. And the police were the one who were causing all the problems.
The country was invaded in 1944, and they were forced to leave their home. Moved from ghetto to train and train to camp, the family were pushed apart.
You know what it depended, our life depended on? Instant decisions like that, choosing which way to go. I went to one of the groups, my brother went to another group, and my father went to a third group. And I've never seen my father since.
Ivor experienced the terrible conditions of Auschwitz and Dachau.
Out of my family, I told you there were 9 of us, 9 children, and two of our mother and father. There's only me and my brother survived. He saved me from the jaws of death, literally 3 times, definitely.
Trapped in the children's barracks, where he sheltered from an air raid siren, Ivor was rescued by his brother Alec.
He said, come on Ivor, you got to come out from there. I said, no, I can't, I'm scared. They found out that he tried to escape or something, you're going to be punished bad. I was literally scared. I said, no, come on, you must come out with me. And eventually he took me out. The following morning he woke up and the whole children's block was empty. All the children taken to the gas chamber.
Some things are too cruel to comprehend. He helped him escape the camp hospital, a dreadful place where he was ill with typhus. There was no proper treatment, and had he remained, there was little hope of recovery.
If he wouldn't have been there to help me out, I wouldn't have been, obviously, alive.
Ivor was 12 and a half at the time.
When I saw my granddaughter, you know what the bat mitzvah is?
Yeah.
Well, she was celebrating the bat mitzvah, she was 12 years old. I said, you know something, I was 12, that was the age I was when I was taken to Auschwitz.
In March 1944, there were 700,000 Jews in Hungary, and within 4 months, over half were killed.
Because, I mean, the figures that you're talking about are so enormous, are so horrendous, that it's very hard to comprehend.
One of the most frightening things is the terrible disconnect between the orders being given and the lives they affected.
Have you heard of the Wannsee Agreement? And that's when they got together, a meeting like we have here with cakes and tea, discussing how to dispose of people. What I keep saying is, I fear people more than God. That a day does not go by without some association that happens, whatever it is, of my background. But fortunately, I don't look upon it. Well, I just live.
After the war ended in 1945, Ivor and his brother emigrated to England.
I've had 2 very, very lucky strokes experience in my life. Number 1, to have survived the Holocaust, and number 2, to have chosen England to be my country. Not only did I feel safe, I felt very, very elated. Honest and truly, I felt I've arrived in heaven.
After arriving in England, Ivor built a life for himself.
I had my own business before I could even read or write or speak English. As soon as we can stand and walk, you have to go start earning a living.
Ivor has 4 children and 6 grandchildren. His home is filled with family photographs. He has given talks at schools and religious centres about his experiences, but it took years before he was able to talk about the Holocaust, even with his own family.
My wife saying to me that, you know, Ivor, why don't you do something? I managed to get a computer. So sit down and sort of tell your story to your children, because I never spoke about it to my children.
He documented his story for them, and it has now reached many other people and touched their lives. Talking about it can be painful, provoking questions that can't be answered.
What has it helped? What has the world learned since 1945? How would I behave if I would have been the Gentile? 1 week we should be friends playing with us, and the second week they were herding us into a ghetto.
Although, as Ivor says, there will never be another Holocaust, conflict and cruelty continue to happen, and remembrance is so important.
All I can do is talk about the experience, what happened, and to tell whoever wants to listen what happens to people who follow that route. And it's like somebody said, you know what, even if there's only one person who has heard either me or somebody else's story and makes a difference, that alone would be worth to have spoken about it.
Yeah.
The only thing we can do is not to sort of answer hate with hate. It's happened, it's happening, and possibly the human spirit will survive, I hope.
I had nightmares about them for years. Those big black Nazi boots. I was 9 when they invaded. For the next 4 years, we hid and ran as they got my family one by one. My father first. Then my mother got sick with typhus. I wish I could go back and tell her that I love her and not be afraid. When my mother died, my uncle paid a farming family to hide us. They killed my little brother. I don't know why they let me go and not him. The daughter of the farm betrayed us. I saw her a little later, and she told me that they had buried him alive. A few years ago, I thought about going back there with a gun to find those who betrayed us, to scare them. I told my son and he was worried, but I saw a psychotherapist and he said I wasn't crazy. It was a normal response. And so I started talking about what happened to me. After all these years, I have finally stopped dreaming about those boots.
You've experienced and survived a Nazi death camp. And all of us in our imaginations might have played a game of picturing how we would behave in such a situation, wondering whether we would be, sly little capos who tried to please the Germans in order to live a few weeks longer, or whether we would be dehumanized into just kind of almost zombie-like creatures with no life left. But you had a middle course, which was due to a gift that you were given from your birth. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yeah. I was extremely lucky. I mean, it's all a matter of luck, People ask, how could you possibly survive that? And I'm one of the very few people who survived a year in Auschwitz. Nobody survives a year in Auschwitz because of music.
Yeah.
However suspect that music was, the reaction to this music was very varied. I've read in books, that it was terribly offensive to hear music in Auschwitz. And other people who said it was wonderful to shut your eyes for a few minutes and to think yourself out of this disaster area, into something.
Because I asked you a question which seemed to me obvious, and your reply was just as obvious in a way, and that was whether music could be ruined by association, by its association with evil.
Yes, some people think that. I mean, I'm often asked, how can you still play the cello afterwards? You can actually elevate yourself into a sphere where this dirt is not going to touch you. That is really the thing.
Did the act of playing the music, which was your work, presumably, while others were making or painting or banging hammers in things, were you kept away from that so that you could practice and
yeah, I mean, we were very, very fortunate, really. Apart from the fact, I mean, number one fortunate was that these two women who run the camp, I mean, I've talked about the Germans now, one of them didn't like the orchestra, but the other one did, so that was lucky.
Yeah.
That we had this job, which really, helped us to survive. Nobody would have survived if we, I was there for a considerably long time. And also, we were such a bad orchestra. I mean, we were just sort of amateur kids, some of them, we were about 5 people who could play properly, that the job of Alma was to make something possible out of us, which meant that Alma was very strict. We were scared of Alma, you know, and forgot temporarily to look out of the window where the chimneys were
This is
going.
Gustav Mahler's niece.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, she was a tremendous lady, really. I mean, she gets maligned a lot now that she was so strict, and yes, she was strict.
Yeah.
And she punished us for playing wrong notes, and we didn't like her particularly, but all of us, I mean, there are very few of us alive still, came to the conclusion that she saved our lives. If she hadn't been like that. Yeah. And also, you know, we were so scared and so preoccupied with not playing, you know, play okay, fine, that we get, that you could for seconds forget where you were, actually. Yes. Mad. The whole thing is mad. You see, they reduced us to something that wasn't actually considered human. We weren't really humans.
Yeah. And it was 10 years of Streicher and his Deutsche Oberbach, or whatever it was, and Goebbels with these films of rats and mice.
I know, I mean, this is what was put in the...
Affenmenschen.
Affenmenschen, yes.
Yes, and Untermenschen even.
And you know, the Germans, they respect authority.
Yeah.
If somebody important says this, it must be true. That is the whole trouble,
yeah.
I think.
I did one of those programs, Who Do You Think You Are? And we were in Slovakia and going towards the shtetl where my grandfather had lived. And the driver, who was supposed to be the one who was helping out with the, you know, all the details and the family trees, and says, he looked around and said, of course, you know, we Slovakians are people of the earth. The Jews were not interested in farming and the land. And I said, wait a second. They were not allowed to own any land. He said, yes, well, yes, it's all right.
Exactly, but you see...
And then half an hour later, he says, you know, I'm just saying, the rich Jews, they got out. They knew what was happening. They could have helped their fellow Jews. I said, whoa, you're now saying that the Holocaust was entirely the fault of the rich Jews who didn't stop to help the poorer Jews.
It just shows you how you can...
It's so deeply
poison
bred.
brains,
yeah.
Yes. We have a bit of a problem who are Jewish, you know. Unless the mother is Jewish, you're not Jewish, and whatever. You know, we stood in the queue in the gas chamber.
All
whether
the same.
we ate pork or drove on a Saturday, a Jew is a Jew and has to be destroyed.
There's some letters in here which seem to me
unbelievable
to strike at the very heart of the terrible problem of evil. Everybody hears that phrase of Hannah Arendt about the banality of evil. This takes the form of a lot of letters home from ordinary soldiers and commandants and doctors and sergeants during the days of the show of the slaughter, which were called Sonderaktionen, special actions.
I just opened that book at random, and I used one letter of one of the guys there, lovely letter to his family. Dear Mutti, dear
Oh, yes.
I hope that you are behaving, not putting your elbows on the table when you eat. P.S. What we are doing here, he was one of the Sonderkommando, gives me a little bit, not all that happy about it, but since Hitler said it, it must be okay. One of the letters here. This is an unbelievable book.
That is a book worth reading because it is just tales from the mouths of people who did
all these terrible things and thought it was okay. A little bit worried, maybe it's not okay, but then of course it was so dirty, it all got splattered with blood, and that wasn't really very nice.
No.
Goebbels, I think, said that, I know you've done a fantastic job there. I know it was very difficult, but you still remain decent people. I mean, you know, it is very difficult.
That's a bit like the Pope blessing the torturers at the Inquisition, isn't it? That's the thing one forgets, of course, is that the layers of hierarchies of
was tremendous.
It seems to us, and to anybody who thinks of their grandchildren, for example, that the idea of them seeing every day death, brutality, cruelty, gunfire, brains flying out of the back of a human skull.
Yeah, I mean,
all these things that you've seen and somehow had to cope with without...
And they worry about things that make me laugh. You
know? Yes.
Anyway, I'm not all that interested, in any case, never have been, to tell young people how terrible it was. It's not about telling our miserable stories to people, and it doesn't actually lead anywhere. So you feel sorry for this poor person who's been through such, can't imagine, terrible. Yeah. That is not really what Holocaust education is about. What is your attitude now to somebody who isn't like you? I'm sort of advocating that they should go and have a cup of coffee together and find that they have perhaps more in common than separates them.
Engagement.
Yeah.
Utopia was put there for a purpose, something to aim for.
Yeah,
It's,
I think that's what it is about. And respect for other people. It's not important enough to have a day, you know, a Holocaust day, and tomorrow we hate the Jews again or something like that. You have to, yes, if it goes really in the depth, and a little bit also perhaps with Jewish history, where the Jews, you know, we talk about Jews like, you know, as I said, like a sort of lump of people, you know, unless we really understand why we are everywhere, you know.
Yes.
Why? Why are we not at home? It goes right back to, what do we do with these people like me, displaced person? Where are you going to go? I'm German, yes, I'm born in Germany. I'm not going back to Germany, live among the Germans. So where do we go? Very little is actually done to perhaps explain who are we actually, we Jews.
It's very, very true.
Who are we? And I would find it difficult to quite explain who we are. We are the most unbelievable mixture. And the victims of having been chased from one country to the other for thousands of years until we are chased out again. The whole idea, what they think Jews are, is so completely nuts. We're just people, I would say.
People who go on the wrong side of history. Can you imagine any Western, not that it makes a difference that it's Western, any Western apocalyptic, Holocaustic genocide of that
happening
kind happening again? Yeah.
I don't think we will ever stop killing each other. Wars, I think, are sort of built into human society. But the refinement, the absolute unbelievable artistry of killing.
Those lines of desks and all the chemicals.
That's right, and people who are completely unable to defend themselves.
If you do meet up with someone else who was there, an alumnus or alumna, as the Americans put it, do you find yourselves telling stories and not remembering what they're saying? Did that happen?
Yeah. I don't know whether you saw a film called Rashomon ever.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I think that is a perfect example. You see people, 5 people, 7 people, I can't remember, witness a murder, and they all tell a different story. Because we are very individual in what we see or what we don't want to see. And that makes history so suspect.
So unreliable, absolutely.
Completely unreliable, because it's completely, you know, it's not it's subjective.
No. Well, you can always come back to